Hello everyone, I am the Medic Kirby, and welcome to my channel, The Commander Tavern. The Commander Tavern is a channel dedicated to my favorite Magic the Gathering format. The Brewery is a series on this channel showcasing my spicy brews under the deck text. On this episode of The Brewery, I'll be discussing my take on a Commander background pairing from Baldur's Gate, Baeloth Barrityl raised by Giants. If you like this deck or any of the cards I'll be mentioning throughout the video, please consider using my TCG Player affiliate link when purchasing those cards. You can find that link down in the description. It'll really help out the channel. The best way you can help support the channel is with my Patreon. For just $1, patrons get early access to certain videos on YouTube. In fact, patrons get a chance to see this video earlier. You can also support my channel for free by simply liking, subscribing, and sharing, which also helps out a lot. I put out a video every Monday, so you don't want to miss out. You can join my Discord server for free if you want to join the Commander Tavern community. All pertinent links are down in the description. Alright, let's get back to the episode. Baeloth is a 2/5 elf shaman with choose a background for 4 generic and 1 red. He has a static ability that continuously goads all creatures with lesser power than himself. This makes him quite the commander at the helm of a Goad deck since it's a passive ability. All you have to do is make Baeloth as powerful as possible, which is why I chose Raised by Giants as his background. This makes Baeloth a 10/10, which will significantly increase his probability of keeping the entire board goaded. If that weren't enough, Baeloth also has a triggered ability that creates a treasure token whenever a goaded creature dies in combat, so don't forget to pay attention to those triggers. While this combination in the command zone costs a whopping 11 total mana to pull off, we can use that time to set up our board state in order to then have these at the ready. The deck having access to green means having all the necessary land-based mana ramp, but we'll see what I included for that near the end of the video. What I mean by preparation is setting up the board for when all creatures are immediately and perpetually goaded. First, let's see some cheaper goad effects before we have the mana for our commander background pair. Komainu Battle Armor, Vengeful Ancestor, and Geode Rager all help goad in one way or another. Of these, Vengeful Ancestor might seem the least powerful since it can only goad one creature at a time, but you don't have to goad a creature controlled by a defending player, so you can attack into a safer board while goading the biggest threat from a different board. Additionally, it also pings opponents for each goaded creature they're attacking with. The other two cards are amazing because they can goad all of an opponent's creatures. Either the battle armor or the creature it's attached to has to connect while Geode Rager cares about landfall. Thanks to Geode Rager, the deck is running 11 fetch lands as well as Crucible of Worlds. We can play a fetch land, goad one opponent, then crack it to goad a different opponent. Thanks to Crucible of Worlds, we can replay them from the graveyard to always be able to goad 2 opponents' boards until we run out of lands to fetch for. Once creatures are goaded, we can speed things up thanks to cards like Mightstone and Crown of Doom. Mightstone will always be pumping attacking creatures by +1/+0, which is great for when everyone's goaded. Crown of Doom adds a hot potato element to the game where opponents don't want to get stuck with it when they're staring down a bunch of goaded attackers. Thunderstaff, Rebel Rouser, and Contested Warzone are included for doing something similar, but they have to be activated in order to pump attackers. As a bonus, Thunderstaff also helps us by reducing the power of creatures attacking us should any get through. The deck has plenty of ways to pump power, so Rebel Rouser is actually more powerful than at first glance. Frontier Warmonger makes it harder for opponents to block goaded creatures since they're going to gain Menace. Best of all, they don't even need to be goaded to gain Menace, so if there's an arch enemy at the table, it'll be easier to take them down. Same with Death Kiss. This Beholder does some work. Its only downside is that it doesn't affect creatures we control, but that's not really an issue, since it's still doubling the power of our opponent's creatures should they be swinging into each other. As a bonus, it has a Monstrosity ability that can also be used to goad creatures in a pinch. Fiendish Duo and Bitter Feud have a similar effect to Death Kiss in that they double the damage dealt to opponents. In this case, Fiendish Duo does affect our creatures as well. Bitter Feud can be used against the remaining 2 opponents, or even between you and the final opponent if you're able to end it with that extra boost in damage amplification. It is a bit risky though, so be careful with it. Concordant Crossroads and Mass Hysteria are some more boons to help opponents take each other out. If all creatures are goaded and have haste, then any creature without defender that can attack must attack. This means that they won't be able to keep up any blockers and it'll definitely end games faster, as well as you taking advantage of the haste too. Worst Toll also helps in this regard. If you are only able to goad one or some of an opponent's creatures, if you have War Toll out, they have to attack with all of their creatures. Just keep in mind that this won't prevent those non-goaded creatures from heading your way. As a bonus, Worst Toll also makes it very hard for opponents to keep mana open for responses outside of their turn, because once they tap a land for mana, they have to tap all of their lands, whether they produce mana or not. Kazul Tyrant of the Cliffs and Platinum Angel are included in case some creatures do make their way through and can come at us. Keep in mind that Goad does not work when it's 1v1, so having ways to tax attackers or gain blockers goes a long way. Granted, not losing outright thanks to Platinum Angel also works. Just make sure to protect it at all costs if you got one. Other ways of accelerating the game is by gifting creatures to be goaded. Forbidden Orchard, Tahngarth First Mate, Rite of the Raging Storm, Life of the Party, Daryl Hunter of Walkers, Varchild Betrayer of Geldor, Varchild's War Riders, Hunted Dragon, and Hunted Troll help out in case opponents don't have enough creatures to entertain us. What's the point of goading the board if there is no board? Some of these are amazing, like Daryl being able to snipe down one of the Walker tokens he creates for you to draw a card. However, if those zombies die in combat, you'll draw the card anyways. Varchild's War Riders makes a ton of survival tokens the longer it stays. If you combine that with Varchild, if she were to die somehow, then you take all those tokens. Tahngarth is another creature since you can give it to an opponent during their combat step. This pairs amazingly well with some of the one-sided boons for our own creatures because we can give them a pumped up Tahngarth to smack another opponent with. Terastodon, Rampage of the Clans, and Beast Within also give opponents gifts to smack each other with, however at the cost of losing things, so these also serve as removal. Rampage of the Clans especially since it helps wipe the board of those annoying pillow fort effects that can hinder our goad strategies. The deck is still running conventional removal though, like Chaos Warp and Back to Nature, because we want to be the only ones manipulating combat. Those pillow fort effects and stacks effects have got to be dealt with once we can goad the entire board. And even if they get a creature from Chaos Warp, it'll be goaded anyways. Another key aspect of the deck is the fact that we're going to have a 10-10 commander when we have the background in play. If all of our opponent's creatures are goaded, then apart from those with Vigilance and Defender, chances are that they won't be able to block our commander. 10 power is still a 3-turn clock, but don't forget those boons we have in the deck for attacking, making Baeloth a possible 2-turn clock. But how about we make him a one-shot commander? Nayith of the Dire Hunt, Two-Handed Axe, and Xenagos, God of Revels can help double Baeloth's power when we enter combat. Xenagos even has the added bonus of giving Baeloth haste as well. If Baeloth becomes 20 power and then gets that +1 extra power from a boon, it's game over for that opponent. And not just these cards either, the deck's running Unnatural Growth. This thing doubles all of our creatures' power and toughness at the beginning of each combat. That means that if opponents were to have any bigger creatures than Baeloth, they'd still be goaded. Because once their combat step begins, Baeloth's power is going to be doubled to potentially 20. Then any creature they control with less than 20 power will have to be goaded. This enchantment is so crazy good here. Kessig Wolfrun is another amazing way to increase Baeloth's power at instant speed no less. Not only can we use this as a way to pump Baeloth's power during an opponent's turn if they had bigger fatties than Baeloth, but we can also use it during our own turn to pump Baeloth for that commander damage win since the land also gives him trample. Kedis Emberclaw Familiar helps us take out the board even faster by sharing the damage. Unfortunately, only the original defending player will take commander damage, but the rest of the opponents will still be losing a huge chunk of life when Baeloth connects with the defending player. Naturally, Champion's Helm, Swiftfoot Boots, Whispersilk Cloak, and Lightning Greaves, as well as Darksteel Plate, Hammer of Nazan, and Shield of Kadra are included because of how dependent the deck is on the commander. Granted, there are some other goad effects in the deck, but since you can also win via Voltron, it is important to take as much care of Baeloth as possible, especially since he costs 5 to cast the first time. Making him indestructible or doubling his toughness also helps him survive a well-timed Blasphemous Act. If all else fails, we might have to destroy the board, gifts and all. This is especially crucial when it's down to 1v1 because Goad doesn't work when your opponent's the last opponent. Casting this when it's 1v1 and then swinging in with a killing blow from Baeloth is super clutch. Rapid Vigor and Heroic Intervention also help us out against not just our own Blasphemous Act, but other board wipes as well. The deck does need generic protective effects after all, so you might as well include these. Same with Springleaf Avenger and Balaged Recovery. What I love about Springleaf Avenger in Goad decks is that most of the time you will have an opponent to swing into and then trigger its combat damage effect. You'll then be able to recover any permanent from your graveyard, which can be any key artifact, creature, enchantment, or even a fetch land if nothing else. The sorcery doesn't even take up a slot in the deck since its backside is a land. Now that I mentioned value for smacking our opponents, the deck's running Oran of Frostfang, Toski Bearer of Secrets, and Keeper of Fables. Since it's so easy to attack into potentially defenseless boards when everyone's goaded, you can draw into a ton of cards thanks to these 3 creatures. Unfortunately, Keeper of Fables triggers per player hit by a non-human creature and not creature per se like the other 2, but it's still good enough to potentially draw 3 cards per combat. Freyalise Lanoir's Fury can also draw us a ton of cards, but only via her ultimate. But that's fine since her other 2 abilities are incredibly useful here, since you can destroy an artifact or enchantment, which I've already mentioned are important against pillow fort effects, and her +1 also helps out a bunch by providing a mana dork. Thought Vessel, Decanter of Endless Water, and Reliquary Tower are also included not just because of how many cards you can potentially draw with the deck, but because, as I mentioned earlier, our commander package is a whopping 11 mana, so these cards technically don't take up a slot in the deck and also provide an additional advantage. Soul Ring, Arcane Signet, Gruul Signet, Talisman of Impulse, and Fulwar Stone are still included and should be here because the mana cost of our command zone pretty much demands it. That being said, while these 7 mana rocks are great in the early game, land-based mana acceleration is still better. Farseek, Nature's Lore, 3 Visits, Rampant Growth, and Into the North are thus included in the deck. So apart from Soul Ring and Decanter of Endless Water, all the mana acceleration in the effects in the deck are 2 mana, which is quite helpful for setting up our early game. But we still need more, so Sword of the Animus and Sword of Hearth and Home are also included for good measure. Once we start goading creatures, it'll be easier to attack into defenseless boards, so ramping for basic lands each time we do is amazing. Sword of the Hearth of Home, blinking a creature is also quite the bonus, since we can blink the previously mentioned Hunter Dragon, Hunter Troll, Life of the Party, Terrastodon, Vengeful Ancestor, and War Child to reuse their Enter the Battlefield and Leaves the Battlefield triggers. Such an amazing card here, both value and land-based ramp. Speaking of lands, the rest of the deck is just the rest of the lands. The deck's running Stomping Ground, Cinder Glade, Highland Forest, Sheltered Thicket, Command Tower, and Ancient Tomb, as well as 6 of each snow-covered basic land. Recall that the deck has plenty of ways to ramp for basics like the swords, ramp spells, and fetch lands, and there's snow due to Into the North being a 2-costed land-based ramp spell. As with all of my deck techs, you can build your mana base according to your budget. Whether you include more expensive cards or even cheaper cards is up to you. You do you. This brew is just an idea of how to build around Baeloth Barrityl Entertainer. While you can definitely pair him with absolutely any background you want, this one seems to be the best one so far and also quite popular, so you can definitely find even more ideas out there for it. That being said, I still feel like Marisi Breaker of the Coil is the best Goad commander out there. However, each has their own ways of getting the win, so they're still different enough where you can try them both out and see which one you prefer. If you're interested in the deck list of this spicy brew of mine, you can find a link to it down in the description. I would like to thank all my patrons for supporting me, and a quick shout out to all my higher tier patrons, the brewers, for their patronage. I'd also like to thank anyone using my TCG Player affiliate link. That also helps out the channel. And to everyone, thanks for watching this episode of The Brewery on the Commander Tavern. I am the Medic Kirby, and happy brewing.